guys, and a lot of friends and folk I know in the audience today. And I'm thinking back to that kind of fateful decision that we made as a bunch of GPs at Slawit Health Centre to be probably one of the only surgeries in the country to actually tell our patients what was going on. Remember, we've been told not to tell you by NHS England. So it felt, I think once we've made that decision to tell a small group of individuals, and some of you were there, Fiona, I know you were there on that internal meeting in the surgery, we didn't realise we'd kind of lit the blue touch paper.
What you were starting?
No, and even though I've lived in Slawit, you know, my wife and I, when we first came to Huddersfield, we lived in next to Pat Malcolm up at Pole Moor. It was only sort of later on that I realised that, you know, just what a track record of campaigning and of socialist values and of making a difference. That history that's in this valley. I didn't know that many years ago when I first moved here, and didn't know that it would come to my rescue and our rescue at some stage later in my life. So in terms of kind of detail, if you remember what was being imposed on us, and we've had this sort of hanging over our heads since 2014, which is sort of over 3 years that we believed these cuts were coming our way. And they were projected to be a 44% funding cut, which to us would not have been survivable. And on the timeline that they were being implemented on, we would by now be out of business, and that Slawit Health Centre in its current form would not exist. I'm not sure what would have come in its place, but we can only speculate. But thanks entirely to the campaign and in parallel the legal action that one of the patients undertook, eventually a deal was struck with the commissioners, and the commissioners changed in the course of the campaign. Originally we collectively were campaigning against an NHS England sort of nationwide commissioning body. The responsibility for GP commissioning transferred to the local CCGs in April of last year, so April 2016, and that proved to be quite a kind of fateful change in the end, because we were able to engage in some constructive dialogue with the CCG. The outcome is that, you know, there were several possible outcomes. That, you know, the CCG could have stuck to the national process and could have insisted on implementing the cuts in their entirety. They could have backed down entirely, which would have been very difficult for them in terms of the precedent for other surgeries. So we had quite an important role played by the local medical committee that Hester Dunlop's linked into, acting as a kind of broker to try and come up with some sort of compromise that enabled us to retain enough funding to carry on providing a service to our patients, but also was not too contentious, you know, could be accepted by at least, you know, a majority of other practices. There didn't seem to be too much of a disparity. So the deal that's been struck, and I can tell you the figures, you know, to the best of my knowledge, instead of a 44% cut, it will be a 20% cut. That felt like a good outcome to us, and probably the best that we could get. The second part of that was that the cuts would be phased in over the next 3 years. Probably what we couldn't survive probably was a 20% cut implemented straight away or backdated 2 years ago. But fair dues to the CCG, they were phasing those cuts in over the next 3 years. And then the third part of it was that they would make us eligible to join some of the incentive schemes that sort of pooled pot of money that they've taken off of surgeries to enable us to win a proportion of the money back potentially. Not all of it, nowhere near all of it, but a proportion of it. So going through the numbers with our practice accountants, looking at our, you know, kind of staffing establishment, etc. And it's our belief that we can carry on for the foreseeable future. I'll come back to that phrase, foreseeable future, in a second. So certainly for the next couple of years, we can carry on. You know, we will take a hit kind of in terms of profits, the profit that partners make, which is effectively their salaries for working there. but for our colleagues that work there, our salaried colleagues, salaried doctors, salaried nurses, reception staff, we will keep everybody. We're not losing any staff. Opposed to what I'm hearing from Selma that the hospital system is fine.
No one really kept that quiet.
Yeah. I have to say, for me, I got. I'd never been involved in any kind of campaign like this. Never in my life. I found that there was a time in my life where it really took my life over, and I think Malcolm Jones had quite a moment in my life and said, you probably need to take some time off. And I said to him, I've got a week off over Christmas. I think you need more than a week, mate. And I look back, and as Selma said, what a job from Fiona Russell and others around attracting sort of media attention. All the other people that came up with those really innovative and news-grabbing, attention-grabbing kind of headlines. I like the commissioners won't consult with us, so we're going to consult with ourselves. Picked up by GP magazines. Other GPs around the country read. My favourite day was the day that BBC Radio came to town. And there was one afternoon, and I'll get some of the details wrong, but it was a kind of afternoon programme. Fiona featured, Pat Jones featured, and who was it? Julie? Yeah, it was famously, and Julie's point, there's punchline to the story, of course, this was a 2 or 3 hour radio. The programme was on the afternoon on Radio 5 with Adrian Charles as the presenter, and there'd been a terrible terrorist atrocity somewhere. Something I don't want to embarrass myself by guessing which country was wrong, but something really bad had happened which was dominating the news. But despite that, you folks managed to open National Radio 5's programme, close the programme, and feature twice more in the middle of the programme. They also had a pre-recorded interview with James Ward, who kept a diary. He said, it's Slawit Health Centre, dominating Radio 5. And the punchline was that they have very sophisticated technology, the BBC. All there is like the presenter person and the kind of assistant or on-site producer. Then they come and all they've got is no wires. It all goes straight up to the sky somewhere, and they're in touch with the live studio because it's live radio. It's a voice in your head saying, "Don't swear." And they interviewed Fiona and Pat, and then we came to June at the end. And June made the point about if the NHS was affordable, post-war in times of real austerity, it probably is affordable now, and that we need it. Well, this went kind of viral. It was picked up. It became a big headline on the BBC website. So the on-site producer came up to me then and said, that's gone on very well. So I get marvellous feedback from what June said at the end there. Where is she? I said, no, she doesn't work here. She's just she's gone for a cup of tea in the village. So they ran down to the village to find June. Okay, so thank you again for your support. I mean, it's interesting that a small number of people who believe passionately about something can make a really big difference. And our story is unique. I don't know of another surgery in the country that has achieved an outcome like this. And I don't know of another surgery that had a community and a patient group that campaigned so effectively. There were other surgeries where there was a lone voice, where there might have been a local patient spokesperson who made some comments. They didn't do anything like what happened here, and that's across the whole country. It didn't happen in London either. The whole of London is facing these cuts now. It's not on the news, is it?
No.
In terms of what happens next, I use that phrase sort of for the foreseeable future. I think we're okay for the next couple of years. I think it's going to get a bit hairy in about 3 years' time, 2.5 years' time. We still think if the numbers stack up, we're okay. When we're up for the fight, by the way, we want to carry on providing the service. I think it's conditional on what happens next in terms of investment for the NHS and for social care. You know, what happens politically, what happens in terms of the funding envelope for the NHS, what happens with the SDP process and the projected sort of redesign of services. And I think that applies to every surgery in the land. It doesn't just apply, and every service that's a part of the NHS. In terms of my final sort of point, that might come back up in discussion, in terms of if I had a magic wand, what would I ask the politicians of all persuasions to do? And I think Selma's point there, if it's the Labour Party's point of some kind of pause from at the centre to say, okay, we thought we were going in the right direction, we have a doubt. That's all they need to say, or just a pause. Let's pause all cuts for health and social care. Let's pause the SDP process. Don't throw it away. You've done some really good sort of preliminary work in terms of analysis and some outline plans at a high level, all very useful for the future. But let's pause the projected closure of Huddersfield Ryde and Infirmary in effect. And there probably isn't, and finally to acknowledge that there isn't one individual in the world that knows what the solution is going forward, and therefore there isn't going to be one political party either. And that the solution to what comes next for the NHS and social care is probably parties coming to, this is going to go down like a lead balloon after the week we've had with at the centre with calls for cross-party working, but some kind of cross-party working with some kind of independent commission or inquiry. I've felt that way all along, and when I talk to my colleagues on the inside of the NHS, the vast majority of doctors I talk to would say the solution to the future comes from a massive level of dialogue with the public, and absolute honesty from politicians to put their hands up and say, we don't know the answer either, we need to all work together, we need to set a funding envelope for the NHS that's protected over the next 15 or 20 years, so that's the money that's available for the NHS, that's the money for social care. Massive levels of public dialogue and independent inquiry into the future. And so we're never all going to agree, but something that meets our collective needs in the future and is backed by the majority of people. And I think for those of us working on the inside of the NHS, I'll be honest with you, it's a pretty desperate place to work at the moment. We're all feeling pretty demoralised. People are cutting their hours down, they're looking to retire if they can, looking to diversify and work in other ways. Not because we love the job that we do, but if it's half killing you, if you're doing 10, 11, 12-hour days on effectively usually less money year on year, that doesn't last forever. You can't run anything on goodwill. So I wave my magic wand and my banner for some kind of independent inquiry into the future, and as Selma said, some sort of pause at the moment, just stop the nonsense that's all around us.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question of both of you, really? I think, I'm not sure if it was last year or the one before, but there was one of these online petitions got a debate in Parliament about taking the NHS out of politics and having a separate entity to run it. So that would be like the government